Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The surprise that should have made her smile. The door creaked open just past midnight. Rylan Maddox stepped inside, boots still dusty from the tarmac. He hadn't told anyone he was coming home early, not Tessa, not her friends, not even the neighbor who usually watered their plants. He just wanted to see her face when she saw him. He set his duffel down quietly and walked toward the living room. The house was dark, but not asleep. A wine glass sat half full on the side table, lipstick on the rim. Jazz hummed faintly from the kitchen speaker, her Relax playlist. She wasn't in bed. As he stepped into the hallway, a shadow passed near the back door. Rylan froze. "Tessa," he called out. She appeared, startled. Wrapped in a silk robe, phone clutched tight in her hand. "You're home," he smiled. Surprise. She tried to smile back, but it broke halfway across her face. She hugged him stiffly, her body cold even under the robe. "You didn't tell me," she said. "I wanted to see your face when you saw me," he said, pulling back. Didn't expect that face, though. Behind her, the phone buzzed. She fumbled to silence it. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Panic? Rylan's stomach twisted. He just returned from serving his country, carrying sand in his socks and blood on his hands. He was expecting open arms. But this? This was a closed door in a familiar frame. Later that night, while she showered, he picked up the phone she tried to hide. The screen lit up with a name he didn't recognize. "Can't wait for next weekend." Rylan didn't feel shock, just stillness, because in that moment, he knew. But how far did the betrayal go, and who else was in on it? Hey everyone, we just hit 3,000 subscribers on Midnight Affairs Tales, and I couldn't be more grateful for your love and support. Your passion for deep, emotional, and shocking stories has helped build something truly special here. Now, I've quietly started a new channel. It's called Betrayal Stories Lab. It's a place where I'll share even more powerful stories, full of betrayal, unexpected twists, and unforgettable endings. If you've enjoyed the journey so far, I'd love for you to check it out and be part of this new beginning. Channel link is in the description. Just one click, and you're there. Let's grow this new space together. Our first goal is 1,000 subscribers. And if any story touches you, don't forget to share it. Thank you for always being here. The next morning, she made French toast, just like she always did after his deployments. But the rhythm was off. No humming, no glances, just silence. Rylan sat at the table, watching her closely. The way her hand trembled when she held the spatula. The half-second pause before she asked, "Sleep okay?" "Like I never left," he said flatly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Rylan wasn't impulsive. The Navy had taught him to study patterns, read micromovements, track the unseen. And what he saw now wasn't just guilt. It was fear. He took a bite, then set his fork down. "So, who's Ethan?" She flinched. A second too long. "What?" "Your phone lit up last night. Said he's excited for next weekend." He sipped his coffee. "I assume he doesn't know I'm back." She tried to laugh it off. "Ethan's a client. From the studio. Text her clients at midnight?" She stood frozen, then turned away, muttering, "You've always been paranoid." Rylan didn't argue. He just stared at her back. The robe she wore wasn't hers. It was new. He'd never seen it before. He remembered something his father once said. When someone starts preparing for a future you're not part of, you'll feel it first, not see it. That night, Rylan opened their shared laptop. The history was wiped clean. He didn't sleep. Instead, he drove across town, parked outside a building labeled Beringer Contracting. The name matched some documents he'd seen her glancing over weeks ago. The lights were on inside. 2 silhouettes. One of them moved like Tessa. Rylan didn't get out, just watched. And something cold settled in his chest. He wasn't just being replaced. He was being erased. But why him? And why now? At 2:14 a.m., Rylan slid into bed beside her. She didn't stir. She slept soundly, too soundly. The kind of sleep that only came when guilt had already been rationalized. He stared at the ceiling. By morning, she was gone. Left a sticky note on the fridge, teaching a sunrise class. Back by 9. He walked into the bedroom. The sheets were still warm. He pulled back the comforter and found an earring, small, silver, with a dull red gem. It wasn't hers. He opened her closet. In the back, tucked behind a storage box, he found a second phone. Locked. By noon, he had a guy on base, Roman, cyber specialist, crack it for him. The messages hit like bricks. He suspects. Nah, he's too distracted with war stuff. I'll talk to the lawyer. Just need the right timing. Every text added weight to his chest. But it wasn't just the texts. It was the calendar event marked for next Friday. Meeting, lawyer, life policy. He scrolled. The contact list held a familiar name, Harper Quinn. She used to be his father's lawyer. Now she was working with Tessa. Back at home, he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. They weren't just cheating. They were planning something bigger, cleaner, something that left no trace of him. He opened the drawer where he kept his father's old things. Letters, service medals, and a flash drive. Rylan plugged it into the laptop. Empty except one folder. Maddox_exit encrypted. Just like his father used to do during ops. Rylan smiled for the first time in days. If they wanted to play operations, they picked the wrong Navy man. How deep was this betrayal, and how many more were pretending to be allies? Rylan sat on the porch, the early morning sun burning gold across the horizon. In his hands, the flash drive. Encrypted. Silent. Heavy. His father had used the same kind of encryption back when he worked Black Logistics in '92. He once told Rylan, "If I ever put something behind a lock, it's because breaking that lock means you're already in deep." Well, he was in. The graveyard was quiet when he arrived. Just him, a bench, and the headstone, Jack Maddox's father. Veteran. Never blinked. Rylan lit a cigarette. He didn't smoke. But his dad used to. The smell helped him think. "You always said I'd know when something was wrong," he said aloud, fingers tightening around the drive. "I didn't know it'd be my own damn wife." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photo, him and Tessa on their wedding day. He tore it in half, then again, tossed it in the wind. Behind him, a man stepped out from a parked car. Clean suit, government-issue sunglasses. Not someone from town. Rylan clocked him instantly, posture too rigid, boots too clean, and watching too carefully. He left the cemetery without confrontation. No reason to expose what he was building just yet. Back at home, he uploaded the flash drive to a private air-gapped laptop. One folder blinked to life. Inside, PDFs, blueprints, old military contract receipts. One name popped up again and again. Beringer Contracting. And then, a redacted report with an unredacted subject line. Operation Silent Build. Discrete veteran identity replication for grant funding. Rylan sat back. They weren't just cheating on him. They were using his name and military record to launder millions through government funding. This wasn't just betrayal. It was war. How long had his name been sold? And who else helped them build this house of lies? Rylan didn't ask questions anymore. He watched. At 6:42 a.m., Tessa left for her yoga class. Tight black leggings, coffee in hand, Bluetooth in her ear. Always parked in the rear lot of the studio, never the front. At 7:15, a black truck pulled into that same lot. The same one from the contracting office. A man stepped out, same build, same limp. A war wound he once bragged about over beers. Rylan stayed across the street in a rental sedan. Tinted windows. Disposable phone. Disposable license plates. At 8:22, both came out, laughing. She touched the man's chest. Too familiar. Too casual. At 8:29, she left in her own car. At 8:30, Rylan walked across the lot. Calm. Measured. He stood outside the building, looked up at the camera near the back entrance. Exactly where he expected it to be. He smiled at it. Just once. Then turned and walked away. By noon, he was back in his father's workshop, an old steel garage filled with surveillance gear, analog tools, and things better left off record. He placed the laptop on the workbench and brought up the files again. Each document tied Tessa or that man, Garrett Langford, to grant money approved for veterans' businesses. Except Garrett was never enlisted. Rylan's name was used as the project consultant on 3 separate builds. Forged signature. Forged forms. He called Roman again. "I need a data sweep, emails, legal docs, anything tied to Langford Construction or Beringer Contracting." "What's going on?" Roman asked. Rylan paused. They killed me on paper, he said, so they could cash in before I came back. But now I'm back and watching. Rylan's fingers hovered over the folder labeled Langford, War File. It wasn't an official file. It was a memory archive: photos, bar receipts, surveillance snapshots, and one video from 3 years ago. A bar fight in Jacksonville. A younger Rylan stepping in when two drunk men were shoving a veteran, Garrett Langford. He remembered it clear as glass. A beer bottle flying, Langford ducking behind him like a coward, Rylan swinging first. He'd saved him that night. Called him a cab. Shook his hand. Now that same man was sleeping with his wife and stealing his future. Rylan played the video again. Garrett's face flickered across the screen. Sloppy. Smiling. Back then, he was just a guy. Now, he was the enemy. Rylan grabbed his jacket and drove downtown. He parked across from Langford and Company, a fake veteran-run construction front, clean as a church on the outside. Inside? Paperwork laundering, shady invoices, and a wall of fake certifications. He knew what to look for now. He entered under a false name, Noah Braddock. Simple black ball cap, fake ID, clean beard. Here to ask about subcontracting work, he said to the secretary. Langford came out 15 minutes later. Didn't recognize him. Smiled and shook his hand again. Some debts age well. Rylan walked the site. Took pictures. Noted license plate numbers. Memorized faces. That night, he uploaded everything into a secured server. The Navy always taught him, know your enemy before you strike. And Rylan wasn't just gathering data. He was building a case. Brick by brick. Nail by nail. And when the hammer dropped, it wasn't just going to hit Langford. It was going to tear the whole house down. The gas station was half empty. Gray clouds crawled across the sky, casting a low, angry light over the lot. Rylan pulled up beside Pump 7, the engine humming low. He wasn't here for gas. He spotted Garrett's truck idling by the side store, parked illegally as if the rules didn't apply. Inside, Garrett stood at the checkout, arguing with the clerk over a prepaid card. Loud. Careless. Like a man who thought nothing could touch him. Rylan walked into the station with quiet boots and calm eyes. Their eyes met. Garrett blinked, then smiled like nothing was wrong. Well, damn. Rylan Maddox. You're back. Rylan kept his tone flat. That's right. Garrett offered a hand. Rylan didn't take it. Tessa didn't say a word. Garrett chuckled. Guess she wanted to surprise you. Rylan's jaw flexed. Oh, I've had plenty of surprises lately. Garrett laughed, forced, like a man trying to steer the tone. You know how it is. Life's weird after deployments. People act different. You're not people. You're a leech. Garrett's grin faded. You don't know what you're talking about. You're living in my shadow and wearing my boots, Rylan said, stepping closer. But I'm back now. And I'm watching. The silence between them thickened. You think you scare me? Garrett hissed. No, Rylan said, turning to leave. I think I've already buried you. You just haven't realized it yet. Outside, the wind kicked up. The smell of gasoline hit sharp in his nose. Rylan inhaled deeply, anchored. He got in his car and drove off, watching in the mirror as Garrett stood frozen, the prepaid card still in his hand. Back at the garage, Rylan opened the flash drive again. A new file had decrypted. Langford_policy.pdf. He opened it and found his own name listed as deceased veteran spouse on $1 million life insurance policy. Filed last month. Signed by Tessa. So this was the game. And Rylan had just made his first move. Rylan installed the last lens behind the ceiling vent, then closed the cover slowly. He checked the feed on his laptop, crisp, stable, hidden. For new camera angles inside the house. One in the kitchen. One in the living room. 2 in the bedroom. He'd learned patience from years of recon work. Quiet eyes always won louder wars. Tessa came home late that night. Her smile was plastic. Didn't think you'd still be up. I sleep lighter these days, Rylan replied, nodding to the hallway. Long class. Yeah, had to cover for Danielle. Her kid's sick. Rylan just nodded. He didn't press. He didn't need to. By morning, the cameras had already paid off. At 2:38 a.m., she left the bed quietly, crept to the kitchen, answered a call. Rylan scrubbed through the audio feed. Tessa whispered, he's getting suspicious. No, I haven't told him anything, but we need to speed it up. Yes, Friday still works. She paused. No, he hasn't seen the policy. Pause again. Yes. It'll look like a PTSD episode. That's what the lawyer said. Click. Silence. Rylan stared at the screen. His fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. He backed up the footage, encrypted it, and sent a copy to a separate drive marked Deadman Trigger. Next, he contacted Roman again. I need phone triangulation for Tessa. Look for midnight calls, burner numbers, anything linked to Beringer's cell towers. You think she's moving now? Roman asked. She's already moved, Rylan said. I'm just making sure I burn every bridge behind her. He disconnected, walked into the kitchen, and looked at the mug Tessa had left behind. Lipstick on the rim. Same color she wore on their anniversary 2 years ago. He didn't feel pain, only precision. They were planning to make him disappear. But now, the cameras were his witnesses. And Tessa? She didn't know she was already under cross-examination. Rylan parked outside Deacon's office, low-end insurance shop with peeling window decals and a crooked open sign. The kind of place people forget exists until they need a quick payout. Inside, Deacon looked up from behind a cluttered desk. Rylan. Man, didn't know you were back. Yeah, Rylan said. Funny how nobody did. Deacon stood, offering a handshake. Rylan ignored it. I need to talk about a policy. Deacon hesitated. Oh, okay. Something wrong. Rylan pulled out a manila folder. Inside were 3 documents. The insurance policy listing him as deceased, the signature from Tessa, and a notarized witness line. Signed, Deacon V. Hill. Deacon's face paled. I didn't know, don't lie, Rylan snapped, slamming the folder on the desk. You knew I wasn't dead. You knew exactly what you were helping her do. It wasn't like that, Deacon stammered. She said it was a temporary document, some legal trick for a business loan. She told you I was mentally unfit. Rylan interrupted. She fed you a line. And you, my friend, helped her file my death while I was still bleeding sand from deployment. Deacon sat back, sweating. I needed the cash, he muttered. And I needed a friend, Rylan said coldly. He pulled a small recorder from his jacket. Hit play. Tessa's midnight call echoed softly through the room. She's planning something, Rylan said. And you're already in it. Deacon's lips trembled. What are you going to do? Rylan leaned in. Calm. Steady. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to use you. He tossed a burner phone on the table. From now on, you report everything. You play stupid. You stay close. And when the hammer drops, you better be on the right side of the swing. Deacon nodded, broken. Rylan walked out. Trust was gone. But leverage? Leverage was better. Rylan stood in the center of the yoga studio, watching from the street as early clients stretched inside. Peaceful music played through the open door. Fake serenity. Manufactured calm. He wasn't here to stretch. He was here to study. Through tinted sunglasses, he observed Tessa glide between mats, smiling, adjusting poses, cracking soft jokes like nothing in the world was wrong. Like she wasn't conspiring to erase her husband from existence. Next to the sign-in desks at her co-owner, Janelle, sharp-tongued, always quiet around Rylan. She typed furiously on her laptop, eyes flicking toward Tessa with something cold beneath her smile. He waited until the class ended and everyone filtered out. Then he stepped in. Tessa flinched mid-laugh when she saw him. Didn't expect you. Seems to be a theme, he said. Janelle cleared her throat and stood. Need something, Rylan? He looked at her, not smiling. You keep the books here? Tessa narrowed her eyes. Why? He stepped forward and laid a single piece of paper on the counter. It was a printout from the IRS website, an audit flag for Maddox Wellness, LLC. That was their business license. Filed jointly. Except Rylan had never signed the 2023 documents. Janelle's face fell. You used my credentials, Rylan said. Filed government assistance under my veteran status. Without consent. That's felony territory. Tessa snapped. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you did. Rylan cut her off, his voice low. And I know it wasn't just you. Janelle opened her mouth, then closed it. Rylan leaned in. Better decide fast who you're loyal to. Because when the audit hits, they're going to start asking which signature is real. He turned and walked out without another word. Behind him, Tessa's voice cracked in frustration. Inside her house of lies, the walls were finally starting to bend. The garage was colder than usual. Ryland stood at the workbench, dissecting financial records Roman had dumped into a flash drive. 42 pages. Wire transfers, anonymous donations, shell company loops. They'd been laundering money through a network of fake veteran-owned businesses, 3 tied directly to Garrett Langford, 2 more under false names, one of which used his social security number. He leaned closer, squinting. One transfer caught his eye, $95,000, moved from Valorbilt Incorporated to Ashbine Holdings, marked as consulting. Valorbilt was a fake name. Ashbine, however, wasn't. It belonged to a man named Randall Cortez, former city councilman, removed 3 years ago in a hush-hush corruption scandal. Ryland pulled the burn phone from his drawer and dialed Roman. I need eyes on Randall Cortez. Past affiliations. Anything tying him to Beringer or Langford. Roman sighed. You're pulling people out of retirement now? They pulled me out of the grave, Ryland replied. Fair's fair. As the data uploaded, Ryland heard footsteps too light for boots. He looked up. Tessa was standing at the edge of the garage. I know you've been watching me, she said. Ryland didn't answer. You planted cameras. You followed me. Still nothing. You want to scare me? She snapped. Fine. You're scaring me. Happy. He finally looked at her. Not yet. She blinked. What do you want from me? The truth. She scoffed. You wouldn't believe it. Try me. A long pause. Then she turned and walked away. Ryland didn't follow. Instead, he looked down at the burner phone and saw a new message from Deacon. Langford just met with Randall Cortez. Restaurant downtown. Private room. Ryland grabbed his jacket. If Cortez was in play, this wasn't just about infidelity or stolen money anymore. It was bigger. This was organized, funded, protected. And Ryland wasn't just taking names anymore. He was getting ready to take them down. The restaurant was sleek, quiet, and too expensive for most. Ryland slipped in wearing a muted gray jacket, earbuds in, hidden mic on his collar. His phone streamed the feed directly to Roman's encrypted server. Table 14. That's where Langford and Cortez sat, 2 glasses of scotch between them, a folder passed beneath the table. Ryland settled at the bar, ordered water, and angled his phone just enough to catch their reflection in the mirror behind the liquor shelves. Langford's bluffing, Cortez muttered. If he thinks dragging a dead vet's name around gives him leverage, he's dumber than I thought. He's not dead, Langford said flatly. Cortez froze. Then we've got a problem, he said. No, Langford continued. We have a clock. And it's ticking. Ryland's fingers tightened around the glass. Cortez was in deeper than expected. Langford leaned in. Tessa's close. She's got him softened. A few more days, and we close it clean. The last wire goes through, we flip the documents, and he disappears. Cortez raised an eyebrow. Disappear how? Langford smiled. It's handled. Ryland stood. He'd heard enough. He stepped outside into the cold night air. Rain started to fall, light, biting. His breath steamed as he dialed Roman. They're planning to erase me. For real this time. What do you mean, erase? I mean fake an episode. PTSD. A vanishing act. A death that can't be traced. Roman was silent for a beat. Then, you ready to go loud? Not yet, Ryland said, eyes scanning the skyline. But soon, he slipped into the shadows, the fire burning just beneath his skin. They wanted to erase his name, rewrite his legacy, forge documents, stage a breakdown, vanish him into paperwork. But they forgot one thing. He was his father's son, and Jack Maddox never blinked. Ryland drove through the cemetery road slowly, gravel crunching under the tires like dry bones. The headstones looked different now, less like memorials, more like warnings. His name could have been here already. Would have been, if Tessa had her way. He parked beside his father's grave, cut the engine, and stepped into the wind. The air was cold and clean, too clean for what he was planning. In his hand was the insurance policy, printed, highlighted, annotated. In the other, an envelope addressed to a local journalist. One he'd served alongside years ago. A guy who knew how to sniff out a lie. He crouched by the headstone and set the envelope down. Thought I'd be buried next to you, he muttered. Ryland stared at the engraved words for a long time, then spoke like his father was sitting across from him. They forged records. Used my ID. My service. Told people I was unstable. Build a whole damn scheme on top of my name. The wind howled low across the field. I'm not just exposing them for me. I'm doing it for every vet they tried to turn into a paycheck. His phone buzzed. Message from Roman. Found proof. Cortez is linked to VA contract routing. Shady deals buried in veteran grant budgets. Quiet fraud. Millions. Ryland didn't reply. He stood, brushed off his knees, and walked to the truck. Before he drove away, he looked back at the headstone one last time. You always said to fight clean, he whispered. I'm sorry. I'm not that man anymore. And with that, he drove straight into town. He had a funeral to fake. But this time, it wouldn't be his. Inside the dusty backroom of Roman's hideout, a small computer repair shop with blackout blinds and gutted servers, Ryland sat staring at a monitor glowing with scanned documents. One stood out in bold red header. Maddox, Ryland J. DOD, 12/18/blank. A placeholder death date. Roman leaned over. This one's active. They filed it through a third-party clearinghouse. Outsourced to avoid red flags. Through Behringer's network? Roman nodded. And the underwriter was someone from Cortez's old campaign donor list. It's all incestuous. Ryland clenched his jaw. What about the payout? They tried. Twice. Got delayed both times, glitch in verification. Probably because you're still alive and breathing. Ryland laughed darkly. Guess being inconvenient saved my life. Roman tapped another file open. Here's the kicker. They took out a second policy. Different carrier. Smaller amount. It lists the cause of death as psychotic break due to untreated PTSD. Pre-filled. Ready to submit. Silence hung thick in the air. They weren't just planning to kill your name, Roman said. They were going to bury your mind with it. Ryland stood, pacing. Every step echoed like thunder in the concrete room. Can you intercept the next payout request? Roman nodded. Already did. Froze it. Flagged it. But they'll know something's up soon. Good, Ryland said. Let them squirm. Roman raised an eyebrow. You want them to panic? No, Ryland said, eyes narrowed. I want them to act. Desperate people make dumb mistakes. And I want every single one of those mistakes recorded. He leaned over the map they'd pinned to the wall. Photos of Garrett, Tessa, Cortez, fake companies, dates, bank trails. This ends, Ryland growled. In public. Roman nodded. Then it's time to go loud. Back home, Ryland sat in the dark with only the glow of the laptop lighting his face. He was staring at the folder labeled Exit Plan again. He hadn't touched it in days. Not since he found the original insurance documents. Now he opened it. Inside were photos of him. At his lowest. From before deployment. Images he never knew were taken. Him sitting in the garage after a funeral. Drinking alone on the porch. One of him passed out in bed with pain meds nearby. His back injury from the 2020 op. Each photo was timestamped. Labeled. Justification material. He clicked a document named R. Maddox Risk Profile. It read like a psych eval. Compiled notes, false statements, suggested mental instability. References to past trauma, withdrawal from spouse, untreated depression. Fabricated. All of it. His heart pounded, not from anger, but from clarity. Tessa had been building a case for months. Gathering dirt. Shaping a narrative. Preparing the world to believe that when he snapped, it wasn't her fault. It was calculated. Cold. Professional. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated character assassination. And now? Now he had proof. He copied the folder. Uploaded it to 3 off-site encrypted drives. Sent one to Roman. One to his journalist contact. One scheduled to auto-send in 24 hours if his phone went dark. Then he picked up a voice recorder and hit record. My name is Ryland Maddox. This is my voice. I am not unstable. I am not suicidal. I am not missing. If this message plays, they got to me before I could finish what I started. He paused. I won't let that happen. He hit stop. Save the file under the name. If__disappear, MP3. Then he grabbed his jacket. It was time to show Tessa what a real exit plan looked like. At 4:12 a.m., Ryland left his phone on the kitchen counter, screen side up. It was a deliberate move. By 4:17 a.m., it pinged, twice. Both burner numbers. Both silent. Tessa was still asleep. Ryland slipped out the back, duffel over his shoulder, and disappeared into the pre-dawn fog like a shadow that never belonged. He wasn't running. He was ghosting, on purpose. Operation Ghost wasn't just a plan. It was a psychological reset. One his father had drilled into him after his first Black Ops rotation. When your enemy thinks you're gone, they stop hiding. That's when you strike. He left just enough breadcrumbs to suggest a breakdown. A note with vague wording. An open bottle of sleeping pills. One combat boot left on the back porch. By 6 a.m., the rumor was already spreading. Rylan left town. Rylan's not doing well. PTSD finally caught up to him. And Rylan? He was less than 10 miles away, holed up in a decommissioned ranger cabin his father used to hunt from. No Wi-Fi. No cell signal. Just hard drives, paper files, a shotgun by the door, and a generator humming like a heartbeat. He made contact with Roman via encrypted satellite ping, short bursts of code. No words exchanged. The data drops started arriving that afternoon. One folder stood out. Behavioral packet, Maddox, built by Tessa. Supported by Janelle. Sent to a private psychiatric firm, likely setting up a court claim to declare him unstable, incapacitated, and ripe for legal override. And yet, while they were painting him broken, Rylan was finally free to move. No tail, no suspicions, no eyes on him. In the enemy's mind, he had become exactly what they needed, a ghost. And that's what made him lethal. 3 nights later, Tessa received a text. Let's talk. No cops. Just dinner. One last try. She stared at it for 20 minutes before replying. Where? Rylan chose the birch room. Upscale, semi-private, and just quiet enough for secrets to echo. A place they'd once celebrated their anniversary. Now it would host a funeral. He arrived early, dressed clean, composed, neutral. Tessa walked in at 7:06 p.m., wearing black like she was mourning something, but she smiled like she wasn't. You look alive, she said. Rylan smiled. And you look relieved I am. They sat. Silence stretched like piano wire between them. So, she started, picking up her menu. You disappeared. I had to think. She nodded slowly. You know I didn't mean to hurt you. You filed me as dead. Her face twitched. I didn't. Garrett handled that. You signed it. Silence. Rylan reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. Set it on the table. This has every document. Every voice recording. Every financial trail. I know everything. Tessa's fingers curled around her wine glass. I haven't submitted the evidence yet, he continued. I wanted to give you one shot. Just one. She stared at him, hard. You want me to beg? I want you to talk. Tell me who else is involved. Who's pulling the strings? Tessa didn't answer. She just laughed, cold, brittle. You think this ends with me? No, Rylan said quietly. It ends with you starting it. He stood, leaving the drive behind. And if I were you, he added as he walked away, I'd start praying Garrett doesn't crack first. That was the last thing he said before disappearing into the night. Tessa sat frozen, her hand trembling. Because now she knew. He wasn't bluffing. The next morning, Rylan stood in front of a quiet bank in a small town 30 miles out. No cameras. No press. Just a man with a plan and the documents to execute it. Inside, he met with the trust officer, an old Navy contact named Malone. The paperwork was already prepared. The Jack Maddox Legacy Trust, funded with $132,000 in frozen marital assets, quietly transferred through a legally clean escrow trail Rylan had created over the last 2 weeks. He'd been planning this since the moment he saw the forged signature on the policy papers. The trust was real, legal, locked. The sole beneficiaries? A veterans legal defense nonprofit, a therapy fund for dishonorably discharged soldiers seeking expungement, and one sealed future payout to a name listed only as Whistle 19, a placeholder for whoever would eventually take Cortez and Langford down publicly. Malone looked up from the signature page. This is personal, isn't it? Rylan nodded. This isn't revenge. It's correction. They shook hands. Back in the truck, Rylan took a slow breath. That chapter was closed. But the next? It was going to bleed. He pulled up the security cam feed from Deacon's office. There, clear as day, was Garrett Langford, pacing back and forth, voice raised, hands waving. Deacon looked terrified. Rylan turned on the mic. Can you hear me? Deacon jumped. Yeah. He's losing it, man. He thinks Tessa's turning on him. He wants to speed it up. Said if the payout doesn't come through soon, he's taking matters into his own hands. Ryland's eyes narrowed. Good, he said. Keep him close. Keep him talking. And then, Ryland leaned back in his seat. Then we make sure he does what he does best, which is lose control. It was 3:42 p.m. when the courier arrived at Garrett Langford's contracting office. Standard delivery, brown envelope, signature required. Nothing unusual except it wasn't addressed to Garrett. It was addressed to Investor Board, Vanderbilt Holdings. Garrett barely looked up from his whiskey glass as the receptionist called out, something came for the board. Board? He didn't even think they had one. That had been Cortez's angle, create the illusion of oversight. He waved her off. Leave it on my desk. 10 minutes later, Garrett was tearing it open, eyes bloodshot from a 3-day bender and lack of sleep. Inside was a USB stick and a single printed note. Play this in front of your investors before Friday, or I will. He froze. Plugged the USB into his laptop. Footage loaded. For camera angles. One from the studio, one from inside Garrett's own office. Audio synced perfectly. Tessa's voice. Ryland's asking questions. Garrett's voice. Then we move fast. If he snaps, we've got the psych records ready. Then clearer, sharper, Deacon's office. Garrett screaming about closing the deal and getting Ryland out of the picture permanently. His heart dropped. The entire scheme was in there, laid out with timeline overlays, scanned documents, court form drafts. His hands shook. He yanked the drive and smashed it under his boot, as if that would erase the damage. But it was too late. The clock had started ticking, and Ryland made sure the bomb was ticking loudly. Back at the cabin, Ryland watched Garrett's reaction through the hacked office camera feed. He leaned back, arms folded. Roman's voice crackled through the earpiece. We're in. Whole board's been blind copied. Ryland's voice was calm. He's about to lose everything he built on my name. Pause. And I'm not even done yet. Garrett arrived at the Vanderbilt site just after sunrise, reeking of old sweat and last night's panic. He barked orders at foremen, shoved clipboards out of the way, and demanded updates like a man who'd already lost control. No one had answers. Because the permits weren't real. The funding had been frozen, and the site inspector scheduled for 9 a.m. had been tipped off anonymously. Garrett lit a cigarette with shaking fingers and cursed under his breath. Who the hell is pulling this shit? He stormed into the mobile trailer that served as his field office. Inside, a thin envelope sat on the table. Another one. He ripped it open. Cease and desist notice. Filed by Maddox Legacy Trust. Claiming unauthorized use of a licensed veteran identity. Demanding shutdown of all operations tied to Maddox registered service contracts. Attached was a legal brief, sharp, clean, ironclad. At the bottom, Ryland's digital signature. Garrett collapsed into the chair, sweat slick on his forehead. Meanwhile, across town, Ryland walked calmly through the city clerk's office. No cap, no glasses. Fully visible, fully alive. He approached the records clerk. I'd like to reinstate an identity falsely marked as deceased. The woman frowned. I'm Ryland Maddox, he said. And just like that, the first public reappearance began. Ryland made it known he was back. And the contractors who profited off his ghost? They were already sinking in the cement they poured. Janelle paced in front of her apartment window, eyes fixed on her laptop screen. The inbox was exploding. Audit requests. Media inquiries. Even the Better Business Bureau had sent a formal question about fake veteran certification. She called Tessa again. No answer. The doorbell rang. She jumped. Through the peephole, Ryland. She opened the door half an inch. What do you want? To talk, he said. 5 minutes. Not here. Then pick a place. But pick it fast. Because when this collapses, you'll want something that proves you weren't a willing partner. Janelle swallowed hard. You don't scare me. Ryland leaned in just enough to make her freeze. Good. Because I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to remind you what's coming. She hesitated, then stepped back. 10 minutes later, they sat in a cafe booth, far from town. Ryland slid a folder across the table. Bank statements. Studio leasebacks. Business grants with my forged ID. You signed some of these. I didn't know, Janelle muttered. You didn't ask. She closed her eyes, breathing hard. You want out? Ryland asked. You're going to give me everything. Emails. Tessa's real investor contacts. Who else helped you fake ownership? You tell me that. I'll keep your name off the first wave. And the second? He sipped his coffee. We'll see how honest you are. Janelle didn't speak for a while. Then, she said it was victimless. That no one would care because it was just paperwork. Rylan leaned forward. She used my life like a prop. And you helped. So you either start fixing it now, or you go down with her. She nodded slowly. Outside, the clouds were building thick and dark. Inside, so was the storm. Rain spit against the windshield as Rylan waited in the parking lot of a small roadside diner just outside state lines. It was the kind of place people passed without noticing, perfect for the kind of man who didn't want to be seen. At 7:03 p.m., the black SUV pulled in. Tinted windows. Same plates Roman had tracked to the private lot behind the yoga studio weeks ago. Garrett Langford stepped out, but he wasn't alone. The woman beside him was not Tessa. She was taller. Red hair. Business attire. She carried herself like someone used to power. Rylan lifted his camera lens slowly, snapping shots as they entered the diner and slid into a back booth. His earpiece crackled. Roman lived tapping the diner's mic line. He's been asking too many questions, Garrett said. Tessa's stalling. I don't trust her anymore. The woman replied sharply. She was never supposed to be involved this long. You complicated this. I had to keep her close. She knows too much now. Pause. Silverware clanked. If we have to clean house, we do it fast. Rylan froze. The woman, the redhead, had just handed Garrett an envelope. Inside were documents. Roman pulled the digital feed, doctored medical files, pre-written statements, and another name listed as a primary claimant to Rylan's second life insurance policy. Not Tessa. This woman was listed as his legal next of kin. Rylan sat back, breath shallow. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was contractual, strategic, wide. This wasn't about love or jealousy anymore. It was fraud on a scale he hadn't imagined. And Tessa? She was a pawn too, which meant the real power was still out there, and it had just shown its face. It was supposed to be another quiet morning. But when Rylan opened the newspaper that someone had slid under the cabin door, everything stopped. The front page headline, decorated Navy veteran presumed dead following psychological episode, body missing. He stared at the byline. His name, his photo, his death public now. Official. He wasn't just being erased behind closed doors. They had made it real. Roman's message pinged moments later. It's out. Distributed through syndicates. VA systems updated. Social records marked deceased. They pulled the trigger. Rylan sat still for several seconds. Then stood. Then moved fast. He pulled the satellite laptop, hit an emergency key sequence, and activated his fall protocol. Within seconds, multiple secure copies of his voice recordings, Tessa's betrayal footage, and Langford's diner meet went live, queued and ready for drop. All it needed was one final action. Meanwhile, Roman was calling. We've got a serious problem. You're officially dead now. Banks, tax ID, DMV, even your phone account, it's all shutting down. You're not a person anymore, man. Rylan didn't blink. Then I don't have to play by their rules. He stepped outside. The cold slapped his skin, but he welcomed it. In that moment, Rylan wasn't broken. He wasn't scared. He was free. Because now, he could act without hesitation. He was no longer a man on defense. He was the ghost in their system. And ghosts don't wait for justice. They deliver it. It was just after noon when Rylan Maddox walked through the front doors of the City Records building. No disguise, no hesitation. The receptionist looked up and froze. Sir, I'm here to file a fraud claim, he said, placing a folder on the desk. She flipped it open. Her hands shook. Why, you're supposed to be. I know what they said, Rylan replied calmly. But I'm here. In the flesh. And I've got the documents to prove they forged everything. He pulled a notarized affidavit from the folder. I want a reversal filed with the VA. I want my identity restored. And I want a copy of every internal access log from the day my death was entered. She stammered, reaching for her phone. I need to call the director. Do that, Rylan said, stepping back. And tell him I'm not leaving until I get a statement from this office on the record. Behind him, Whispers were already spreading across the lobby. Ryland Maddox was not dead. He was alive, and the lie had just exploded in public. The VA regional office in D.C. buzzed with tension. Inside conference room B, two investigators stared at the glowing screen in front of them. A live-stream press clip played on loop. Veteran declared dead, speaks out. Ryland Maddox files identity reinstatement claim. One of the agents paused the video and turned to his partner. This isn't just a clerical error. Nope, the other said. This was internal sabotage. High-level access. Couldn't have been done without someone on the inside pushing it through. They both looked at the name flashing across a secondary document. Randall Cortez. Former councilman. Current consultant. Known manipulator. An emergency red file was created. Code 88. Flag for systemic abuse of federal systems with veteran data involvement. Meanwhile, in a quiet hotel 2 blocks away, Ryland sat across from Trent Halberd, a DC-based journalist and ex-Navy man. You've got one shot at this, Trent warned. You go public now, and it doesn't just rattle cages. It burns bridges. Ryland slid a drive across the table. Let it burn. Trent plugged it in. Scanned through video feeds, audio files, forged medical documents. His face changed as he watched the pieces fall into place. This isn't just personal. This is national. Ryland nodded. And they've been hiding under government contracts long enough. Back at the VA office, the flag hit. Systems began shutting down accounts tied to Valorbilt, Langford and Company, and 3 subcontractors linked to Cortez. Funding paused. Access revoked. And the ones who used Ryland's name to build their empire were about to watch it collapse. The first thing she noticed was her credit card declining at the coffee shop. Then her business app wouldn't log in. Then came the email. Your accounts have been frozen pending federal audit review. Tessa stood in the middle of her yoga studio, hands trembling as she refreshed the page again and again. Frozen. All of it. Minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside. 2 plainclothes agents stepped out. Calm. Confident. They walked straight through the studio doors. Mrs. Maddox? The taller one asked. She turned, blood draining from her face. Yes? We're here with a federal notice. Your business is under investigation for misrepresentation of federal grant status and fraudulent use of veteran credentials. That's a mistake, she stammered. It was just paperwork. My husband, he's alive, the second agent said sharply. And he filed the claim himself. Tessa's lips parted, no words coming. She collapsed into the chair behind the desk as the agent handed her a thick envelope. Audit notice. Pending charges. A warning not to leave the state. When they left, the room felt colder than before. Her phone rang. She didn't answer. Another notification came in. Studio lease terminated. Ryland had quietly pulled out of the joint ownership agreement, something he'd done weeks earlier through the trust. She hadn't even noticed. The floor beneath her feet wasn't just shaking, it was crumbling. For the first time, Tessa understood. He wasn't trying to get even. He was dismantling everything she stood on. And he wasn't done yet. The Oak Ridge Veteran Foundation Gala was supposed to be the year's most elegant event. Hundreds of guests, polished speeches, music, wine, laughter. Garrett Langford arrived in a sharp black suit, jaw tight. Tessa walked beside him, composed but pale. They were both trying to appear untouchable. It was a lie. They took their seats near the stage, reserved for honored partners and veteran support. Big mistake. Halfway through the dinner, the lights dimmed. A video was cued. On screen, Ryland Maddox, in uniform, saluting. Then snap cuts of paperwork, fake signatures, Tessa's midnight call, Garrett's planning meeting. The room fell silent. Gasps. Then outrage. The footage had been edited precisely, undeniable, time-stamped, narrated in Ryland's voice. While I was deployed, these individuals used my name to steal from a system built to protect people like me. All heads turned toward Tessa and Garrett. Someone whispered, "That's them." Security guards moved forward. Garrett stood, knocking over his chair. "Turn it off. This is fake. It's a setup." Tessa shrank beside him. Ryland, dressed sharp in a dark blazer, stepped into the edge of the spotlight near the screen. "It's not fake," he said calmly. "And I'm very much alive." The room exploded in noise, cameras flashing, people shouting, some clapping. The board of directors stood to remove Langford's sponsorship instantly. Federal agents who had quietly slipped into the gala earlier made their move. Tessa was cuffed. Garrett resisted, tried to run. Didn't get far. Ryland stood there, still, as the two were dragged out into the cold night. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just watched. Because this wasn't the climax. This was the beginning of the end. The news broke before midnight. Military fraud scandal. Decorated Navy vet falsely declared dead by wife and business partner. By sunrise, every local outlet had picked up the footage from the gala. National coverage followed. Ryland's face was on screen, calm and composed as the voiceover exposed the depths of the betrayal. At a roadside diner, Ryland sat at a corner booth sipping black coffee, eyes locked on the muted TV behind the counter. The waitress hesitated beside him. "That you?" she asked, pointing toward the screen. Ryland didn't answer, just looked up once, then nodded. She set down his check without charging him. "No one should have to go through that," she said quietly. Back at the cabin, Roman was already pulling up social metrics. "You're viral," he said through the earpiece. Sympathy waves through the roof. "Even veterans groups in D.C. are rallying behind you." "I didn't do it for that," Ryland replied. "I know. But the pressure's working. DOJ's accelerating charges. And guess what? Cortez just wiped his socials clean and filed for a temporary exit visa." Ryland didn't even blink. "He won't make it out," he said flatly. "Not before I'm finished." Down the highway, protesters were gathering outside the county courthouse. Former service members, local veterans, civilians holding signs that read, "Stolen valor isn't just a crime, it's a war." The weight of justice was finally shifting. But Ryland wasn't celebrating. Not yet. He wasn't after noise. He was after the ones still hiding in the dark. Deacon sat in a dim interrogation room, sweating through his collar. His lawyer had advised silence. But Deacon never was good at silence. "I didn't know it would go this far," he blurted out, hands shaking. Tessa said Ryland was unstable, that she was protecting him from himself. "I just notarized a few forms. That's all." The agent leaned forward. "Forms that falsely declared a living man dead. Forms tied to insurance fraud and psychiatric manipulation." Deacon looked down. "I didn't think they'd actually push it through," he muttered. "I thought it was just leverage." "Who gave you the scripts?" "What scripts?" The agent slapped a stack of emails onto the table, Deacon's name all over them. Forwarded instructions, coaching language, suggested phrases to use in testimony. And at the top, a message from Randall Cortez. Deacon's breath caught. "I didn't even talk to him directly, just got the messages through Tessa." "And you didn't question that?" "I needed the money," he whispered. "That's all it was." From behind the two-way mirror, Ryland watched. He didn't flinch, didn't move. He just listened. Every lie, every justification, every "I didn't know." Roman's voice buzzed in his ear. "This guy's ready to crack. One more push, and he'll give up Cortez's backup servers." Ryland stepped out from the shadows and into the room. Deacon's eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. "I'm not dead," Ryland said quietly. "And neither is your conscience." Deacon broke down. The room was quiet. No interrogation lights. No yelling. Just a camera. A mic. And Ryland sitting across from Tessa in a private holding room at the courthouse. She looked tired. Not the curated version of tired she used to show after yoga class. The real kind, like she hadn't slept in weeks. He pressed record. Tessa didn't flinch. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because the truth doesn't belong in a folder," he replied. "It belongs on record." She exhaled, slow, then nodded. "It started small. Grant money. Garrett said it was free, veteran bonuses, government support. You wouldn't notice. But then, it got deeper. He faked documents. Pushed your name into contracts. You were overseas. It was easy. Why fake my death?" She looked down. "Because the second insurance payout only triggers on confirmed trauma-induced suicide or untraceable disappearance." She said it like she was reading it from a manual. Like it wasn't about him at all. "You were the easiest way out," she added, quieter. Ryland stared at her for a long time. Then, "You ever think about what it would have felt like for my dad? Reading that I was dead because of you." Tessa's lip trembled. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. But you let it." He stood, walked to the door, and stopped. "I'm not here for closure," he said. "I'm here for evidence." She didn't respond. And that silence? That was the loudest confession of all. Inside a downtown cafe, Roman slid into the booth across from her. Vivian Hale. Red hair. Sharp eyes. The unknown woman from the diner with Langford. She didn't look like someone used to playing backup. She looked like someone who'd finally had enough. "You're protected," Roman said quietly. "But only if you go on record." Vivian didn't blink. "I want immunity. And I want out. You'll get both. But first, you give us Cortez. And his shadow accounts." Vivian slid a flash drive across the table. Encrypted. Clean. He kept everything. Sloppy. Thought hiding it in old political server mirrors would protect him. He was wrong. Roman checked the metadata. Goldmine. Hidden routing instructions, offshore diversions, server logs connecting Cortez directly to the insurance laundering tied to Maddox's case. And then, buried in one file, a kill order. Roman froze. What the hell is this? Vivian looked down. If the suicide claim didn't stick, they had a plan B, plane accident. Cabin fire. Disappear him for real. Roman stood fast. "We're done here." But Vivian grabbed his wrist. "Tell Maddox." "I didn't know. Not all of it. I got pulled in too deep." Roman nodded once. Cold. Measured. He left the cafe with the drive. Outside, the city moved like normal. But underground? A war was about to explode. A white sign stood crooked in the front yard. For sale. Bank-owned property. Ryland stared at the house that used to be his. No cars in the driveway. No flowers in the pots she used to water every Sunday morning. Just silence. He stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked under his boots. The wind cut sharp around the edges of the house like it no longer welcomed him. Inside, the living room was half-packed. Boxes scattered. Picture frames empty. Dresser drawers left open like someone left in a panic. And they had. After the gala, the federal freeze hit everything: assets, accounts, business ties. Tessa's entire world locked down in under 48 hours. He walked down the hallway slowly. Each footstep felt heavier the deeper he went. In the bedroom, only one thing remained on the nightstand. A photo. Him and his dad. Fishing, laughing. Before the deployments, before the marriage, before everything broke. Ryland picked it up. Smiled once. That was the man who raised him to trust his instincts. To fight quietly but strike hard. Downstairs, he left the keys on the counter. He didn't need this place. He'd already rebuilt everything that mattered. The government press conference was short, but brutal. Following an internal investigation, we confirmed that Ryland Maddox's military record was accessed without authorization and manipulated to support false financial claims. His status has been fully restored, and all charges against him have been dropped. Additionally, multiple arrests have been made in connection to this fraud. The camera panned to a table stacked with seized documents, tech, and forged applications. In the crowd, Roman filmed everything on his phone. Backstage, Ryland adjusted his tie. He hadn't worn his uniform since the mess started. Now, it felt right. He stepped up to the podium. "I never wanted to make headlines," he began. "But when someone tries to erase you, to write your story for you, you fight back. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who can't." He paused. "This isn't just my win. This is for every vet who's ever been used, forgotten, written off." Reporters fired off questions. He didn't answer them. He just nodded and stepped back. Outside the building, dozens of vets stood clapping. Some saluted. Ryland didn't cry, but he felt it in his chest, the weight finally lifting. He didn't check the mail often. But today, 2 letters waited. Return address, Federal Detention Center. One from Tessa. One from Garrett Langford. He opened neither. He held them, stared at the handwriting. Familiar curves. The same ink used on their wedding invitations. Then, without hesitation, he dropped both into the fire pit out back. The flames curled around the envelope slowly. Then hungrily. Ryland sat in a lawn chair beside it, wrapped in a flannel shirt. No music. No noise. Just the sound of crackling paper and the wind shifting east. Roman texted. "Tessa's asking for a visit. Says she wants closure." Ryland didn't reply. What could she possibly say now? He stood, grabbed a beer from the cooler beside him, and leaned back into the fading light. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 apologies. That weekend, Ryland drove 5 hours north. No cameras, no press, no noise. just a small hill and a plot of land where his father rested. He stood over the grave, hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. The breeze was soft, warm for early spring. "I handled it, Dad," he said quietly. "All of it." He crouched and brushed dirt from the edge of the stone. "They tried to turn me into a headline. You know the kind. The tragic veteran story." He smiled faintly. "But I didn't break. You'd be proud." He pulled something from his jacket, a folded piece of paper. The original policy, the one Tessa filed. He set it beside the grave. "You taught me to read every line," he said. "Even the fine print." He stood again, took a deep breath. He didn't feel empty anymore. He felt ready to move forward, on his terms. He turned and walked back to the truck. In the mirror, the hill slowly faded into the background. But his father's words? They stayed with him. It took less than 5 minutes for the VA's new official statement to go viral. Rylan watched it happen from the shadows, no interviews, no press circuits. He didn't need the spotlight. His name had been dragged through the mud and stapled to a lie. Now it stood cleared, clean, and redefined on its own terms. At the VA office, he signed a final verification doc, military ID reinstated, active benefits reconnected, and his official death status scrubbed from every system. He handed the pin back to the clerk, a young guy who looked barely 20. "You were declared dead, huh?" the kid asked, almost nervously. "On paper," Rylan said, pulling his jacket sleeve down. "But sometimes you've got to die on paper to remind people you're still dangerous." The kid blinked. Didn't know what to say. Rylan gave him a nod and walked out. Outside, he exhaled into the cool air. He was legally alive again. But the version of him that had walked into deployment 2 years ago? That man was gone. This Rylan was sharper, quieter, cleaner in his strikes, and more dangerous than the ones who tried to kill him ever imagined. He lit a cigarette, not because he needed it, but because the act reminded him of his dad. Then he dropped it, crushed it beneath his heel, and walked forward. The war was over. But his mission? That was just starting. Chapter 37. Letters from inmates. The letters came once a week now. Neat handwriting. Perfect grammar. Carefully written guilt. He never opened them. Tessa's. Garrett's. Even Cortez tried one. Roman had joked, "They're more consistent than your utility bills." Rylan just shrugged. He didn't need their words. Everything they could possibly say had already been revealed in action and in silence. But one envelope, smaller than the others, caught his eye. From a name he didn't recognize. He opened it slowly. Inside was a note, handwritten, messy. "My name's Jason. My brother served with you. He always said you were the one guy who never let anyone fall behind. I just wanted to say thank you. You didn't just save him then. You're saving others now. What you did. We're watching. We're listening. You gave us something to believe in." Rylan read it twice, then folded it carefully and slid it into his inside jacket pocket. Not everything that comes from prison is poison. Sometimes it's just perspective. That night, he sat by the fire pit again. The wind howled low through the trees. The flames danced high. He tossed all the other letters into the fire, watched them crumple, shrivel, vanish. But the one from Jason? That one stayed in his pocket. 3 weeks later, a press conference was called, small, quiet, not even citywide. No glamour. Just chairs in a veteran center gymnasium and a banner behind the stage that read, "The Maddox Initiative, Legal Support for Those Who Served." Roman stood at the side, arms folded, watching as Rylan stepped up to the mic. He wasn't wearing a suit, just jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that had been through too many years. He cleared his throat, looked out at the quiet room, mostly former soldiers, a few families, some in wheelchairs, others in uniform. "No one ever thinks it's going to happen to them," Rylan said. "Being used, lied to, abandoned by the same systems we swore to protect. But it does." He held up a folder. "This was my life, reduced to paperwork, signatures, and silent approvals." He tossed it onto the table beside him. "Now, this center, this initiative, it's for those who don't have a platform. For every veteran used, ignored, or buried under fake paperwork or fraud." The applause started slow, but it spread. Strong. Real. Rylan stepped back. He didn't need to speak more. The mission was clear. Later, as he packed up, a young vet approached him. Nervous, hand shaking. "Sir, I'm going through something kinda like what you did. I think someone's using my records to apply for stuff I never signed off on. But I didn't know who to tell. You just told the right person, Ryland said, and handed him a card. Welcome to the Maddox Initiative. The wind out here didn't whisper. It roared. And Ryland liked it that way. The cabin was tucked deep into the Sitka woods, past the last sign of cell phone reception and 10 miles from the nearest road with a name. It wasn't big, just a wood frame, a fireplace, and a shortwave radio. But it had silence. And after everything, silence was survival. He didn't buy it for comfort. He bought it because it was where his father always said he wanted to retire. Someplace the world couldn't reach, Jack Maddox used to say. Now it belonged to his son. The floorboards creaked as Ryland moved through the space. He kept a rifle above the door, boots by the fire, and a map of the national park marked with red lines. Routes, escape paths, observation points. Old habits don't die. They rest. He walked outside with a thermos in hand, sat on a wooden bench facing the tree line. The snow had started falling, light and slow. He took a sip of black coffee and exhaled. The news cycle had shifted. Langford had been sentenced. Tessa was still waiting for her trial date. Cortez's assets had been stripped and his offshore accounts frozen. The Maddox Initiative had already helped 4 vets challenge fraudulent denials. The ripple was real. But Ryland? He stayed away from it all now. The phone still buzzed in his drawers sometimes. Emails, letters, stories people wanted to tell him, documentaries, book deals. He hadn't answered any of them. He didn't need to be a headline again. He just needed to sit, to breathe, to feel snow on his boots and silence in his chest. For the first time in years, the war was behind him, and the world couldn't reach him here. That night, snow blanketed everything, soft and full, erasing tracks, muting every sound like the world had taken a deep breath. Inside, Ryland lit a fire and sat on the floor beside it, his back against the wall. The glow flickered across old photos he had spread out in front of him. His dad in uniform. Him as a kid, grinning with a fish too big for the line he caught it with. His wedding day, he slid that one aside. Another of him and Roman in boot camp. Back when things were simpler. Before loyalty meant paperwork and betrayal wore a wedding ring. He picked up the photo of his dad again. Held it tighter this time. I did what you would have done, he said softly. Maybe not clean. But clean's not what wins. He looked toward the window. The trees were dark silhouettes against a silver sky. The snow fell harder now, heavy flakes twisting in the wind like ash. He stood, pulled on his coat, and stepped outside. His boots sank into the fresh snow with a quiet crunch. The sky above was endless. No lights, no noise. Just open space and cold air that cleared the lungs. At the edge of the trees, he stopped and looked up. You'd like it here, old man, he said. Then he smiled. For the first time, it wasn't a smile to hide pain or a smirk before war. It was peace. Earned. Scarred. But whole. He turned and walked back to the cabin, one step at a time, his tracks the only mark in miles. Because in this place, he wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't a ghost. He was just a man who survived it all. 2 months later, Veterans Hall, Seattle. Roman stood backstage, adjusting the mic clip to Ryland's collar. The room beyond the curtain buzzed with soft conversation, journalists, veterans, lawmakers, and survivors. The Maddox Initiative had grown faster than either of them expected. Now it wasn't just a support system. It was becoming a movement. You sure about this speech? Roman asked. It's heavy. Ryland looked calm, but his jaw was tight. Good. It should be. The lights dimmed. His name was called. As he stepped onto the stage, the crowd stood in silence. Ryland adjusted the mic when I came home. I expected to be welcomed. Instead, I was buried alive on paper, in silence, in betrayal. A few heads bowed. I was used. For my record, my identity, my pain. And the people who did it wore faces I trusted. But here's what they didn't see coming, he paused. Looked at the crowd. I was trained for war. And when someone declares war on you with ink and signatures, you fight back differently. The room held its breath. But this fight isn't just mine. It belongs to every soldier who's had to prove they matter. Every one of us who's been forgotten. The Maddox Initiative exists because paperwork shouldn't kill a man. Silence shouldn't erase a service record. And betrayal doesn't get to write the final page. He stepped back. Silence. Then a wave of applause, slow, but rising. He didn't smile. He just nodded. Because tonight wasn't about recognition. It was about truth echoing off walls that once ignored it. Federal Court, Washington, D.C. Randall Cortez sat under the bright lights, his skin slick with sweat. No designer suit could hide the fact that he was crumbling from the inside out. A prosecutor held up Exhibit 31, the kill order. "Do you deny authorizing this directive, Mr. Cortez?" Cortez swallowed. I didn't create it. It was precautionary. I never intended. You called it collateral insurance. You sent it through encrypted channels with financial transfers to a private security firm. Cortez leaned forward. It was never supposed to be real. I didn't know Maddox would survive. The courtroom shifted. Murmurs grew louder. Ryland sat in the back row, watching silently. His arms folded, his eyes locked on the man who once tried to delete him like a data file. The prosecutor turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit this along with testimony from Vivian Hale and Deacon Hill, both confirming Cortez's involvement in the laundering of federal grant money using Maddox's forged identity." The judge nodded. Admitted. Cortez's shoulders slumped. His empire, built on contracts, influence, and silence, had turned to dust under oath. As court recessed, Ryland stood. He walked past Cortez without a glance, but just loud enough for him to hear. He muttered, "You should have picked a softer target." Cortez flinched. Ryland kept walking. The battle was over. The verdict was coming. And this time, the system wouldn't be protecting the powerful. A yellow envelope sat on the table. No stamp. No return address. Just her name. Tessa Maddox. Inside her prison cell, she opened it slowly, expecting rage. Blame. A final punch from the man she betrayed. But the letter didn't carry hate. It carried clarity. "You once told me we were unstoppable. But you didn't mean together. You meant as long as I was quiet, useful, out of the way. You built a life on the back of a man you tried to erase. But I didn't stay erased. I rebuilt, not out of revenge, but out of truth. I'm not writing to forgive you. That's not mine to give. I'm writing because when my father taught me about war, he said something I never understood until now. A good soldier doesn't destroy for the sake of it. He destroys so something better can be built in its place. You destroyed what we had, but I used it to build something better for others. That's the part you'll never understand." Ryland, she folded the letter once. And this time, there was no smirk. No tears. Just quiet. Because he wasn't trying to hurt her anymore. He had already won. It was nearly dusk when Ryland pulled the truck to the side of a forgotten dirt road. The trees swayed gently in the wind. Moss-covered stones lined the edge of a clearing, where a wooden bench sat facing the water. He stepped out slowly. No urgency. No storm left to fight. This wasn't a mission. This was a moment. In his hand was a small metal box, dull, worn, but sealed tight. He sat on the bench. The lake shimmered orange under the fading sky. His fingers traced the lid of the box before finally opening it. Inside, his father's dog tags. One photo. One folded napkin with a note scrawled in fading ink. "When the world stops listening, son, write louder." Ryland exhaled. "Hey, Dad," he said softly. "I did it." The wind picked up, rustling through the pines. "They tried to turn my name into a footnote. A fund. A file. But I wrote louder. I didn't let them finish my story." He stood, walked to the edge of the water, and gently placed the box beneath a tree marked with a carved M. It wasn't a grave. It was a promise. One he intended to keep living by. As he turned back, his phone buzzed. A message from Roman. "VA just cleared another vet's record. That's 5 this week. Maddox Initiative is officially expanding nationwide." Ryland smiled. A real one. He climbed back into the truck, looked once more at the water, and drove into the night, not to disappear, but to finally live. 6 months later, a soft hum of life echoed through the newly built Maddox Center, walls lined with black and white portraits of real veterans, not just names on grants or signatures on forms. Ryland walked the hall slowly, nodding to the young volunteers staffing the front desk. In one room, a man was reviewing his discharge paperwork, cleaning up a forged history. In another, a woman cried quietly as her benefits were finally approved after years of denials. This was it. This was the win. Not a courtroom clap or a media headline. This, people being seen, finally heard. Roman joined him by the coffee machine, holding 2 mugs. You ever gonna stop looking over your shoulder? He asked. Rylan smirked. Nah, that's just muscle memory. They sat near the window, overlooking the street. A small crowd had gathered outside, a quiet protest. Not against injustice this time, but in support of what the center stood for. Rylan took a sip of coffee, watched the crowd, and then asked quietly, how many people out there have had their story stolen and just never got the chance to take it back? Roman didn't answer. He didn't need to. The moment held its own silence. A car drove by slowly, honking twice in support. A flag waved. A camera phone pointed toward the building. People were watching. And Rylan? He wasn't hiding anymore. So tell me, how many of you out there have ever felt like your truth was twisted, your story hijacked, your voice ignored? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear where you're watching from. If this story hit you deep, if it made you feel something real, don't forget to hit that like button. It lets me know these stories matter. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the next epic revenge or twisted thriller. We've got more wild rides coming. Until then, take care of your story. Guard it. Own it. Live it. And I'll see you in the next one.